So here's all of my SketchUp work brought in now to Photoshop, and toggling in between some of the captures off the same angle, of course. I'm able to get just a good base, various results for a good base for me to just basically, again, just establish the parameters of my major forms and where they lie in space in relation to one another. And I can just now go ahead and lay in a solid drawing and design more, develop this thing yet further. So still always minding the X, Y, and the Z axis, the fact that SketchUp has done a good bulk of the work for us doesn't mean that we can't, just completely turn our mind off altogether, and nor should we. It's to make things easier, but not to get things done without us. There is not. I have not found that button yet in SketchUp or Photoshop. The design it itself button. But and I don't think that button will ever exist. Hopefully not. Because then we will be out of a job. But until that button does happen, I think it will be certainly up for us as concept artists and designers to certainly imagine and project our notions, our wild ideas onto the page, be it 2D or 3D. So okay. Here we are, and I'm just trying to find out, the various levels of articulation that I would need from this front landing rig, and a cut line or across, these big bold sort of cross lines that I'm doing along the front leg here. Those would be cut sections that I would imagine if this thing were to be constructed, where there would be various pivot points and various modes of articulation that would allow this ship to transform, as I was mentioning earlier, to basically allow it to take on various positions, various attitudes, to have a landing attitude that might be different than, say, an aggressive flight attitude. And by attitude, I mean its posture. So all of those things will certainly help to make the ship more dynamic. And already, I think I'm liking what those those realistic concerns, and that is to say, how does this thing move? How does this thing function? How does this ship navigate its terrain? What's the style it does in so doing? All of those things, I think, can really best be described by shape, and can be understood by shape and by form. And that's what I mean when I mean to say a visual language, a design language. And you want that to be cohesive, as cohesive as possible in all aspects of your design, in its big forms, its major forms, and as well into the smaller details. All should have that cohesion. It should feel like it's cut from the same cloth, so to speak. And these various bits of geometry that I'm, they're just line work now, but certainly will be pieces of geometry that I'm adding to this design here. I'm thinking might have various sensor arrays, visual sort of like a camera that would display and bring back visual information to the cockpit area, where the rider would then be able to navigate and assume a greater sense of understanding of their whereabouts based off of these arrays. So, thinking about these real issues that your design would have to face is going to give your design a greater sense of believability. And that's something that we have to strive to attain as well in our designs, that we want them, not only to be cool and to feel like they are a functioning, piece of mechanic, and that is to say that the mechanisms hold water, your design holds water, and that everything has the correct mechanical properties attached to it. And something that you'll want to avoid altogether when doing these fantastical ships is designing something that might be so fantastical in nature that it would fail to resonate with the audience completely. So you want to find some way, and we'll use earthly objects for the moment, but certainly you can imagine celestial forms and really push the boundaries. But again, you can push them to the point where you've broken the sense of believability. So you want to be cautious in doing so, and always strive to maintain that sense of believability with your audience. I think if you have them believing in your stuff, in your design work, I think that you're doing your job quite well. And you can imagine if you've lost your audience at any point as a storyteller or as a filmmaker, I think you could pretty much imagine yourself as perhaps not as successful as the next person or the next filmmaker who, of course, has their audience members going ooh and ah. So in some ways, there is a bit of success rate attached to this. Now, each design is different. Each design is going to ask different things of you. So you have to constantly stretch yourself and have that sort of adventurous spirit. Constantly look to learn new things, to walk down a path that has not yet been walked, and discover those new things, and hopefully come back from that new place, and come to us as audience members with your grand new vision, your grand new story, and ooh and ah us, and I'm sure we will be quite compelled and celebrate you at the end. So that's sort of the name of the game in doing this this concept art business. Is you want to push that sense of wonder, that sense of awe, that sense of mystery, that newness, and at the same time you want to have it be this sort of an assumed reality. It's like, however fantastical in nature, you're presenting an idea, hopefully at the same time the viewer or the participant can imagine that thing could be built. That's when you've got them, and certainly that's when you've done your job. So okay, a bit of a technical talk here is, you'll see now that as I'm taking this drawing into tone work, I'm applying just a bit of light and shade. And though I'm dealing with some color, I actually am going to try and take away the color as I go. I want to keep things still fairly monochromatic, or even black and white. So beyond, and that is to say, actually not beyond, but instead of going beyond black and white, I think and into the realms of color, even in a limited way, I think is not necessary at this point. I think just establishing the idea and the design in a black and white approach, and just still kind of exploring the the light and the shadow phenomena, the light phenomenon on your design, on the forms of your design, and build off of that. Establish the knowns first. Start with the simple and add complexity to that, and you will make this this process much easier on yourself. Make things less of a headache, and you'll find that actually you won't be going back and having to resolve aspects of your design that are, say for instance, that haven't been tackled at the right time. Say for instance, if you're handling your illustration and there's parts of your design that just aren't quite solid enough, you'll really have to fudge it, and I think it will show in the end result of the design as well. So strive to get as much understanding, right, as much clarity as well onto the page, so that you're informing the various artists and various members of the art department or of any other department that are attached to the project as well. So you want your drawings to be basically like building a blueprint for a building, that someone can understand the implication of this design, of this drawing. They can read into the forms and actually, hopefully, be able to take the flavor of the piece here and any additions, because this work is, it's very, it's done with a quick hand manner, and I think concept art is always lending itself over to be developed onto as it's a part of a relay of a greater race. And I've handed stuff over in my career, certainly, to be very happy, very pleased, and quite impressed with some of the and surprised, pleasantly surprised with some of the choices that a 3D modeler has chosen to do on top of and in conjunction with the design work that I've laid down in the very initial steps of a production of a project. Some I've been able to come back to actually after having left a project, because sometimes you're not, as a freelance artist, you're not able to be there for the project the whole time, and actually had a really good working relationship with these people, with this crew, and so was asked back, and again was just very, very pleased to see all of the wonderful additions and lovely little bit of the macro modeling that was able to take place on top of just some fun ideas that were being expressed in that art department. And again, in video games as well, I've been able to be a part of a very fun art department where very skilled 3D modelers been able to take some of my initial design work and flesh it out to something quite fun and quite exciting. And I think again, it's hopefully something, if done well, from all members, the end result really becomes an effort that is greater than one person, and therefore I think it's something that I certainly admire for that, because it's just something that all participants can can look at and say it is something that is them and greater than them at the same time. And it's really kind of a fun thing to be a part of. And it feels good to know that you've done your job well, and to know that you've been able to assess things, in such a way to hopefully inspire the next level of artists that are going to be attached or attributed to your design. You hopefully you'll want to hear in the art department, let me design that, please let me design that, as opposed to, do I have to do that design? So again, that's another barometer of a certain success level that as us artists are constantly trying to hit or strive towards. I certainly am. But anyways, in slight jest I say that, but in some seriousness as well. But okay, so keeping things, again, like I say, very simple, just working very broadly and trying to establish in line work. I'm going to basically take the tone to a very minimal statement, or to a very minimal end in this picture statement. And I want it to be a more line work heavy image. So I'm really emphasizing with my line the major axis of the ship, and that's how you want to establish the major axis first with long sweeping lines. And if my lines draw off of the design, the silhouette of the design, that's fine. This is a working drawing. So the fact that some of the thought process is showing up on the page, again, should hopefully be appreciated at this point, and it's certainly not anything to be scoffed at. And I think also too, just having a sense of those plumb lines and those plot points established on the page really gets anyone who's looking at this in tune with the construction aspect of it. The great thing working in Photoshop and working digitally is by having established all of that drawing in one group, all of those layers in one group, I can then take that group, right, with just the top drawing part, and as you can see here, I'm toggling it on and off, and I can take that whole group and turn it on to multiply and have it transfer over onto any base tone that I've established with my SketchUp screen grabs. So, okay, speaking of SketchUp, now I like that ortho. I think that's pretty much what I'm going to chase. I think I've pretty much hit the nail on the head with that second ortho. I think that first ortho was cool, and playing with the NASA shuttle or the space shuttle proportions and scale would be something fun altogether. But I quite like the second ortho. There's the chunkiness and massiveness of that first one is fun. It might be a really fun theme to play with, but I wanted to get more articulation and more of a sense of the individual pieces moving, and I just knew that with that more massive ship, to have like landing rigs and things like that, the mechanics would have to be so massive, so huge, that it just wasn't feeling as nimble as I had wanted it initially in my mind. So that's again why we do these things so quickly and so loosely in the beginning. It's so that we can have that power of editing, and really not be too precious with our with our decision making when attacking these designs. But okay, so I aim to do one more bit of modeling in SketchUp, one more level of evolution with my model. And so here I am now taking the side view that I have already established and applying actually in tone. And it's a bit different now. So we're going from line work and now applying a bit of tone. And I have the it's a fairly monochromatic image, and I think for the most part the design, the materials are going to be in this chroma, this sort of steely gray kind of chroma. And another thing too, it's you really want to choose your colors and your materials carefully. You don't want to be too garish and too sort of loud with your selections. Carelessly, I would say, unless there's a moment that would call for that, a design situation that would call for those colors. You really want to keep it subtle and stay within a monochromatic family. It's fine to have accent colors, and you'll see what I talk about more. I'll talk about more about accent colors as we get into the finished illustration. But yes, for now, you really want to keep things fairly monochromatic and relatively close to the middle, as they say, when choosing your colors and materials, your color materials. But okay, so when doing these in a painting, I'm still thinking like I am when I'm drawing, but now I'm just pushing the form and pushing the shape now with tone as opposed to with line. So I'm using a much broader brush, and I'm actually using the brush as a way to describe the complete mass. So if I can get a wide brush, chiseled brush with a little bit of angle, and use that to describe the whole part of the landing gear, and just chip away at that shape, erase out, or with a lasso tool select a notch or two of that big broad brush stroke that I've made, and have that describe the whole landing pad. Great, I'll do that. The landing gear, the foot basically of the landing gear. And then you can always grab that shape if it's on a separate layer and select it and register a light and a shadow within that shape. So you always got to pick a light shape, or excuse me, a light source. Make sure it's one dominant primary light source, and it's treating everything like a box. And, it seems like a silly statement, but if you want to get better at drawing ships and painting ships, draw and paint lots of boxes. And I'm not kidding. It's complexity onto those simple things, and really that's what education is. That's what understanding is. It's just really getting familiar and becoming more and more familiar with simple things until you master those, and then you just keep adding complexity and complexity on top of that until you're juggling the whole house of cards. But now I'm going to talk a bit, since the scale has become a bit more established. We can deal now with paneling, and I'm obviously looking at my encyclopedia of aircraft and seeing where where panels would be cut, where cross sections cross lines might be displayed on a flap to create a rudder. All of these things are very key right now in establishing a sense of scale, an appropriate sense of scale. And I will, air intake, all of those little things. Inevitably, we will want to think about decals and how big those decals are. The relative dispersion of these little bits, and these are now the smaller shapes, right? We've now established our design to the point where we've gone from the big forms to the medium. Now we're getting to the nitty gritty. What color are the eyes of the sitter? Those kinds of things. Those very individualistic features. But it should all match the out. The inside should always match the outside. What is inside the silhouette should always line up and feel consistent with the silhouette itself. And as you can see now, a little bit of finesse is starting to be established onto this design, and but we're just assessing things just very smart. Just having the process be the shining light, guide the way. As they say, trust in the process, and we just establish the knowns bit by bit, piece by piece, and all of the data corresponds correctly with the previous piece of data, and you will get to the finish line in a pretty good sense of time. And what will be nice is that you will have established a really good groundwork for anyone who's going to be developing on top of this, a modeler, to take a look at all of these sketches and all of these, the rough drafts and the orthographic finished illustration, and get it all, have it all there, and it's all self-explanatory, and hopefully, again, like I say, if you've done your job well, that person will say, cool, this is great, can't wait to get my hands on this. And furthermore, when it gets featured in the trailer, that the people seeing the trailer will say, oh, cool, great, can't wait to see so-and-so, though they certainly want to see so-and-so. Their secret reason is that they want to see our vehicles and our ships and our cool things that go blam blam and blast off and etc. etc. No disrespect to the great talent that that contribute themselves to and dedicate themselves to film work and video game work, but certainly hopefully we can contribute ourselves a greater whole as well. So and again, getting back to it, shape for shape, form for form, is this thing a cohesive, tangible design? Is its attitude, is its feeling felt? Is it understood? If so, great, you've done your job. And again, those eternal truths, those universal truths, often are those that are inspired by nature. Nature is the greatest designer, the greatest designer. It will teach us all, I think, and those who are open to look at it for all of the various lessons. I've always gone back to it to solve many a great problem, and I think it will continue on that way for a long while now. But okay, so here we are now, getting to the nth degree, the cockpit, and this is always a good place to be in a design, and it's sort of the face of your ship. So design it with that greater attitude consideration. What's its attitude? It's again, it can something that be expressed in the cockpit shape as well. And to what literal extent do I mean this? I mean, not I'm not saying this is the eye of an owl, the furrowing eye of an owl, but you can imagine, for instance, the certain menace that a viper has, and the shape of a viper head having a certain menace, and the scowl that the forms above the eye give that sort of scowl type of expression to the viper. Then there you have it. You're thinking in that way, that we need you to think to get the job done. So, and to speak and to communicate in that way. And like I said, how much of it is felt at this point in this design, I can't say, but I hope certainly to some respect. And actually, I must confess, I actually did show this piece to an artist who I greatly admire. And in fact, let me throw him up with the masters as well. Steve Berg, you definitely deserve your place in the top shelf of my library. As soon as you get a book out, Berg, I want you to get a book out. Then I will definitely place you on the top shelf. So hopefully this might be a bit of pressure applied to you. If you hear this in any way out there, Berg, I can't wait to get that book of yours when it comes out. But until then, so yeah, but I did show Berg this Steve Berg this design, and he said, "Oh, it sort of reminds me of a snapping turtle," and voila, there it is. So, in some ways, my design intention was understood, and that was the turtle. And you'll see it in a plate of reference that periodically will pop up as I work on this design. But so, if anything, it just gives you something to attach your design onto, some way to give your design, a sense of identity, so you can attach more significant things onto it, and certainly it should then fulfill its own prophecy, and that is to say, if you've chosen wisely, and if I've chosen wisely, this vehicle not only will feel like a turtle, or have that sensation of a turtle, but more than that, it will feel all of the same things that a turtle feels. That is to say, slightly lumbering, sturdy, that is stable. This sort of kind of undaunting sense of force, though it's kind of unwielding. It's once it's headed down a path, though it can turn, it's not going to turn on a dime. Those kinds of things, and I think can those kinds of things can really be understood broadly, so that it goes beyond any one culture, and it then becomes this sort of universal language that we speak. So okay, now as again I've mentioned, now I'm working very much in tone as opposed to line in doing these side views now. And techniques to doing so are big brush, and having the brush working on 100% opacity, and having that one color and that one brush be attributed to that whole form. And in this case, I'm actually working each form and each compartment on a separate layer. So the whole landing rig, the complete landing rig for the front assembly landing rig, as you can see, is on one complete layer. So I can not only paint the silhouette, but I can go back to that silhouette, which is on its own layer, and then paint the light and the shadow aspects of that compartment as well. And furthermore, I can now stage each layer consequently so that they rest behind one another based on what the design dictates. So overlapping forms. Now we're obviously taking our design and our, you know, the elements that we're pushing in our design on the page are having a bit more of that three-dimensionality, right? We're going from the flat sense and applying more form sense, more three-dimensional aspects. And all of that is, again, just it's the optical illusion. It's the trick of light and shadow. Again, more shapes, right? A light shape and a shadow shape. But the sensation of them together give you a greater sense of form. And of course, all things being equal, you want to make sure that your side view matches up with your front view. And again, it's worth doing all of this. It may seem tedious, but it's so necessary. Again, not only for yourself, but to speak to everyone attached to this this production. They can see that front view for exactly what it is now. I mean, you know, there's no question what the design intention is. I mean, you can model off of this front view just as it is, as it sits here and now. And in fact, you know, dirty secret is you really actually don't need an orthographic view. And if you just plot your front, your side, your top view very carefully, you're well on your way to getting a fairly you know, resolved plan for some good modeling to happen. Now with my front and my side work designed out a bit more, I can really get some nice textures established, or nicer textures established. Still very much in the realms of my 2.5, or I'll start taking it now to a 2.75D, I guess. Though it's a 3D model in SketchUp, I'm taking all of my these assets that I will create based off of this side view and this front view. You know, get everything down to the nth degree, and have just one more click of evolution and resolvement applied to your design. And at this point, I take my work in a SketchUp for the second time, and probably the final time, and you know, just evolve my model one level more. Really get in, get out. Take it to 2.75D. Get some nice screen grabs, and be off and running. Okay, so for those of you familiar with SketchUp, you are probably very familiar with this. It's a box. And this is how it all starts in SketchUp. It starts with, excuse me, whoops, with the rectangle, and with the push-pull feature, you can project that plane out, and then I attribute a texture. In this case, it is a an import of my side view drawing, and you then, as you see, attach that side view onto that box, and from there create duplicates. And I've created duplicates just for the simple reason that I want to now, much like I'm sort of like my own Lego factory, I'm drawing out from that side view projection a simple, you know, rudimentary outline of the major forms that will make up this ship. And you can see as I'm compartmentalizing each and every form, for instance, the intake forms and the forward landing rig, the front landing rig, all of that is very simple and very broadly handled. The rear engine, boxes, and all various. I think that, let's see, the most intricate piece of modeling at this point would be some Boolean modeling and also some. Let's see here. Yeah, it would also be this cockpit. I think I created a sphere, which I think consists of using the follow me tool and a circle, because a sphere is what? It's first a shape. So that's circle shape. Around its circumference becomes a sphere, and you compress that sphere. And at this point, I've Boolean spliced some, I think maybe 10-degree or 8-degree slopes, and from there have this articulated form that's just a more dynamic treatment of this form. And by shearing that off the top of that compressed egg shape that I've created, or that egg form that I've created, I now have my new cockpit. So again, very very primitive model, but a model nonetheless, something that I can turn around, look and capture many angles of, and really get a sense of. And from there, you can, for instance, this capture was the basis for this drawing here. And I'm modeling and projecting even more, modeling on top. But it's still very much in keeping with this groundwork here. And you can see this is actually the first ortho. So I'm taking the line work that I've established in my side view and projecting that, and finding various other ways of breaking up my design, because it's all graphic design in some way, and finding compelling ways of breaking up the large masses. And you can see how it's a slightly organic process at this point, and dare I say, inviting some happy accidents. And with just a couple of tones and a couple of color passes, again, thinking like a painter, but using the program Circathia in this instance, I'm able to get some, which one is it? A real nice base work for further development. Again, I can now really get more of a front view to the nth degree, but excuse me, more of a model from this front view, more of an advanced model. But I really don't want to take it that far. I'm an illustrator first, more so than I'm a modeler. So and this is certainly my experience, and this is what I aim to do. So I'm taking this 3D program and I'm bringing it back to my 2D strengths, and in that way, I really, like I say, treat this more as as a 2D assist. So it's a 2.75D, I dare call it. And in the high poly render, in the high poly model here, you can see that the model is going to be a bit more articulated, but even still, not so much. But what I've done now is I've taken all of the assets that I've created after I've done the side view and the front view, and really now getting in there. I mean, you can see now the textures that I'm even dropping from those assets that I've created are relating to the whole design in a very beneficial way, in a way that I can now really see how it's going to start registering in my mind and on the page. And if I were to, let's see, toggle back, in fact, let me bring in this model here so you can see it side by side and see how they're related to. I mean, obviously they're the same. They come from the same mold, but one is just a more articulated version. One's more, has a bit more development attached to it. Let's see if I can snap to this common point here and drag this over. Okay. So here you can see, I mean, sort of the same and sort of not. And obviously the textures have now gone very far. And it started semi-abstract, these textures that I, did in Photoshop were, they had a flight aircraft paneling in mind when I was building them, and a sense of scale assigned to them. But it's still slightly wavering, and you can massage it a bit left and right. Now, actually, a bit more explanation is with these textures here, it gets a bit trickier, and what you have to do is there's a feature in SketchUp where you can set the position of your texture, and by dragging and grabbing these points you can reassess or reestablish the placement, scale, all those things of your texture and how it would fit onto the plane. So that would be that process. And again, take it to Cacathia, create some interesting screen grabs that will elicit you to see something more interesting, whether it be some various color palettes now I'm starting to play with. And actually, let me bring it up. I have here. Okay. For instance, yeah, and it's scene 10 actually is going to be the angle that I choose, and I'm just pushing the color slider a little bit around, and it's a bit more complicated than that. In Cacathia, I'm actually setting a color field map and then assigning a different sun or primary light color to get, in this case, an orange and blue color relationship. And in this case, it's kind of a green on green color relationship. And also assigning different materials to your forms. I'm going for kind of a steel material. This is a bit more reflective, has a higher specular rate, and therefore feels more like steel than, say, this one, which feels a bit plasticky. Now, if I put the two together, if I put the steel capture over just the textures that I've in my assets that I've created, if I place that in Photoshop, with the layer mode set to overlay, then it will create this effect, and it kind of creates this global illumination pass. Either it is flat, and there it is with that steel materials render pass set on top in Photoshop with the layer mode set to overlay. So you can toggle those things back and forth and really get some interesting results. I think started really going wild with some color variations in scene 11. But for instance, it's like, you can really up the contrast of the shadow. You can start poke at, creating an airport, a future sort of air hangar as a backdrop, as a potential backdrop. This would be a very, out of this world kind of color palette. Some sort of Martian landscape or some sort of Martian color palette. Very bleached out kind of effect here, with more umber tones, but a bleached out effect. So you can see here, and I'll say I think I'm playing again that orange and blue, which I quite like, and it's another color combination. I think it's perhaps in scene 8. Scene 6, excuse me. Okay. And this is a bit of color theory, is actually pushing the contrasts in color, and that is to say the hue, the family that the color sits in, push the light and shadows differently. So I've got a green or a cool light source, so I'll have a red and a warm shadow shape. And let's see if I can, again, here's that orange and blue, and I really quite like that orange and blue palette combination. I think there's something to go for that. Yellow and purple, this is red and green. So, again, orange and blue, but flipped. So now it's, instead of orange light and cool shadows, blue shadows, this is blue light, cool light, and orange, just warm shadows. And you can see it's all set by the background color in Circadia. So again, thinking very much like a watercolorist or a painter, I'm just setting in these bases, right? These tones for a base work for me to then do my illustration work.